Hello, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Two Stewards Show. I'm your host, Mark, and I'm here with your other host, Brent.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome, Brent. And we've been doing a series on money, talking about money, but we're going to take a little break and just catch up with some current events. Because the current events are, well, they're quite current, and they're quite eventful, aren't they, Brent?
I'm surprised you haven't commented on my nice new glasses.
So, Brent's got some blue light glasses, and the first thing I asked him when I walked in is, are those ladies' glasses? And I've got a graphic here, just in case anybody has seen Seinfeld episode where George had ladies' frames. That's I think that's what's befallen our young friend here.
Oh, man.
Anyways, back to current events.
Well, we were doing a nice series, and then you texted me. He's like, oh, we got to do something on the current events because the population stats just came in. And
Yeah, because it's just so, I mean, to get us to stop talking
just
about
when we had built momentum
properties
about
of money,
fiat money and all this stuff.
It's got to be pretty, it's got to be quite something.
Groundbreaking.
But yeah, so numbers have come out for the last quarter.
Yeah.
In Canada in immigration. And again, we're interested in investing in real estate. We still like real estate. And, you know, it's a tough environment right now with interest rates being high, although it looks like they're coming down. And prices also being high, although they've come down. It's still, you know, we're in a bit of a conundrum of affordability. And we've had a thesis for quite a while, I think. And I mean, a lot of this stuff has been talked about by other people as well. So the Karadza brothers out of Oakville really put me on a lot of this stuff years ago. And they've been beating the drum about population growth in Southern Ontario, among other things. Also inflation, etc.
When you say beating the drum, just talking about it or actually...
I mean, I don't think they have
like,
an actual drum.
Well, but is it an alarmist kind of like...
Not alarmist, but they've really been like talking about it when nobody else was talking about it.
Right.
And have continued to do so. And just this is interesting. Like, look at immigration. Look at the numbers, right?
And immigration wouldn't be such a bad thing, and it's not really a bad thing.
Whatever.
It's just if you don't have the resources to house people and provide for them when they get here.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like this perfect storm in Canada and Southern Ontario, right? We've talked about inflation to death.
Yeah.
Right? The growth in money supply and how that affects asset prices and what that does to real estate. So that is sort of the background. That's like the big tidal swell that's pulling everything along. But then you add in the regular factors of supply and demand. Right? So we talk about the number of houses being built, how there's been a shortfall for a long time of houses being built, just with regular growth. And then immigration has been inching up. And like, it's like the hockey...
The inches have been getting bigger.
Yeah, they're turning into feet. Well, it's like a hockey stick growth, right?
It's like fiat growth, right?
Yeah.
How do you measure something
interesting
when the standard of measurement or the unit of measurement keeps changing?
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, yeah, supply, demand, right? And people have dismissed a lot of this stuff kind of out of hand, saying like, oh no, you know, here's why prices have gone up. It's because of these Airbnbs, or it's because of this or that, right? Trying to pick one little thing. It's like, no, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, they usually blame it on the investors, right? Not just Airbnb, but investors in general.
Well, there's always a new boogeyman.
Right.
It's no, it is because sometimes depending who you talk to, right? For some
but those
people,
investors, man, they're pesky investors. They just buy everything up.
Yeah, they're buying.
No wonder.
They're buying stuff. How could they do that? Right? Like, oh, yeah. It boggles the mind, right? When people don't really understand, like behind, just the basics of what's going on, right? Of course, investors are going to buy because they're like first-time home buyers can't. They can't afford it.
Yeah.
So as assets rises, investors are able to leverage that, and then they can actually buy more stuff because other people can't.
Yeah. So is it their fault that it's going up, or is it the fact that it goes up gives them the
exactly? They're riding this wave, right? Investors. Anyways, Yeah, we're going on a little bit of a rant here, but people will talk about like one aspect of supply or one aspect of demand and say, "Oh, here's the problem, and we just got to fix this one thing," right? And it's like, no, there's so many issues, right?
Yeah.
We're not building enough homes. We haven't been for a while. We have more household formations coming as millennials get older and like eventually get a life and get responsible and start to build families, right? That's happening
And
later.
that's kind of tied to
now.
the family unit kind of getting smaller and smaller
Yeah.
too, right? Like
Yeah.
the number of people per household
Yeah.
shrinking historically.
Yeah, but yeah, millennials are finally kind of getting with it, and they're forming families. And I
Hey,
think
I'm a millennial, man. I think. Hey,
But
get him? I'm a millennial.
as a group, right? And I think we're going to see a change in that
Yeah.
as the world generally swings back more conservative. I think we're going to see people starting families younger again,
Yeah.
and a bit of a shift, and maybe even bigger families, right? But anyways, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, so demand, right? Houses, not enough houses being built, and like we're looking at some figures now where housing starts are just falling off a cliff,
Yeah.
right? Because it all lags, right? It's not like immediate. So any houses that were being built or a subdivision that was planned, a couple of years ago, it's being built.
Yeah.
Because of the funding's in place.
Well, actually, some might not be being built because their interest rates are jumped up quite a bit higher than they might have calculated their numbers on originally, and now they're like, you know what? Let's just hold off on this for a bit.
Well, it depends what stage they're in, right?
Yeah.
If they're shoveling the ground, they're probably
building,
they're gonna build.
Yeah.
Because the financial penalties to stop outweigh the benefits.
Yeah.
But yeah, anybody who was like in the planning stages,
Yeah.
you may have sunk a little bit of money into planning, but like just stop, right?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense right now.
Yeah. Take your time.
And this has been happening for a while, right? This is going back a year when they're starting to stop new development. So we're going to see over the next 18, 24 months, like this will continue to happen, which means, right, over the next, looking 3-4 years ahead, right? Because you can't just build houses like that,
Yeah.
right? You could buy a home and convert it.
But don't they have those prefab ones and 3D printed houses or whatever?
The shipping container ones, yeah. Yeah, we've seen that as a solution for homeless people being housed, but that's not everybody. The point is, housing starts have fallen, which means there's a lot of houses that will not be built over the next 3 years,
Yeah.
right? Because once housing starts increase again, or once people start to think about it, there's that delay.
Yeah.
Because the planning process in Canada is just ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
But what was the reason that prompted this whole current event kind of chat was some information that came out around immigration statistics.
Yeah.
And that's on the demand side, right? Because that's
Yeah.
not the supply of housing, but it's the demand for it. So what kind of came out, and what were those numbers?
So last quarter, Q3 in Canada, we had 430,000 net new people living here. And if you're watching on the YouTubes,
That's not that many, is it?
I've got a chart here. So this breaks it down, right? 2023 Q3 2023 components of population growth from international sources. So on the right side here, we have just about 108,000 permanent residents.
Yeah.
So our average over the last 3 decades, I think you pulled this up before, was about 315,000
Per year.
total new residents per year, and that would include non-permanent residents as well. But so just this number, 108,000, that's 1 quarter that would outdo that growth.
Just so people are very clear, 1 quarter, like Q3, is 3 months, right?
3 months.
Out of the year. So
Yes.
3 months in a year. Yeah. So in 3 months, it was what?
So 108,000 permanent residents.
Okay.
And then when you add up the rest, it's just over 300,000 non-permanent residents. And you might say, oh, what's the big deal, non-permanent residents, right? So number one, they all need somewhere to live.
Yeah.
Even if they're not here, like, they're
Forever.
going to be here for at least 1 year.
Yeah.
and probably more depending on who they are. So you can look, there's, break it down, 32,000 asylum claimants. They may or may not receive asylum. But again,
they're living here.
This is a quarter. So if you were to extrapolate this out to a full year, that would be 118,000 or something.
I got to look up the population of various cities.
Asylum claimants. Yeah. Look it up. And then we see, 104,000 study and work permit holders. Other non-permanent is 12,000, so that's a bit of a, a catch-all for other stuff. And then there's 164,000 work permit holders. So I would say that the study and work permit holders group is the same, not the same, but in the same grouping as the work permit holders, because the vast majority of work permit holders are going to be people who are international students who have graduated from a college here, and then automatically, or not automatically, but then they can apply, and I think all of them do, they would apply to get a work permit.
Right,
and
because their intention coming here was to study.
And then get a job.
And then get a job here, right? Not like study, get some education, and go back to the country they came from and work there?
Yeah, so we'll get into that, like
okay,
what the whole shtick is here. And like we've talked about it before, so it's no surprise. But anyway, so that's 270,000, let's say, either basically international students, I would say.
In one quarter.
And this is net new. So, I mean, a lot of these work permit holders are people that stayed.
Yeah.
But it's not like, they were already here. Like, they were already here, but this is net new. So this accounts for all the people who went back home. So this is an increase in our population of 430,000 people who were not there. Like, some of them
might have come and then
some came, some went. But overall, 430,000 more people added to our population. We just crossed 40 million, like
not too long ago.
We mentioned it on the podcast, right? And we're at 40.5 million people right now. So, I mean, how many of them are in Ontario? I don't know if I have a chart here somewhere, but the point is for people looking at real estate here, and if you've rented a house lately, anywhere in any, reasonable population center, you will have had a ton of students. Looking right in any any place that we haven't rented at that many, but the few that long term that we have. We've seen numerous student applicants, even short-term rentals that we have. We get a ton of students applying just for a short stay while they try to find housing because they can't find housing.
Here, check this up on the screen for a second. So this just, it helps to kind of watch these episodes maybe to see the graphs, but this is 2019. The government Statistics Canada came out with this data. So this is from StatsCan. This is a projection of the number of non-permanent residents. So you can kind of see the historic trend lines. It's definitely going up quite significantly. But in 2019, they made some projections, right? And they said, okay, well, a low projection basically just is a flat line at this current rate. And how unrealistic is that?
Well, right? And this based on government estimates, though, right? They're also working with the federal government. Here's our targets.
Yeah, that's 4 years ago they made these kind of assumptions. And so the highest projected line they had back in 2019 would basically level off at around 2 million as a total
in the
2040s. Yeah. So let's pull up this other graph here. So this here is the actual. So if you see this yellow line, this is the actual, and it just basically skyrockets to the top of the chart, 2.5 million, and we're only 4 years in. So
we met our targets. Next,
we exceeded our targets by 500,000 20 years earlier.
Holy cow!
But do you think that's going to have an impact on housing and demand and all the other different services around, not just housing, but
Yeah, and I mean, you think about it. So
Yeah,
2.5 million. Here, I'll pull up one here. Ontario international student visas issued by year, cumulative, and yeah. So it's.
I guess like what is the cause of that increase, right? Like why does it jump
here's
quickly
one.
so fast?
So this is just Ontario international student visas issued by year. So obviously, like you got different colored lines here, right? And they correspond to different years. So 2015, like every year it grows and grows and grows. So 2015, we saw 100,000 international student visas issued by year, like for that year. And this is when some people were catching on, like, hey, we got a lot of international students. Like this is having an effect on.
I think a lot of the people
that
are going to college and university also noticed.
Yeah.
It seems to be like changing.
Yeah.
I forget when I went. I think I graduated in 2013.
Yeah.
I forget. Anyways, but yeah, I know like, my siblings who went to school 10 years later than I did, their experience was just way different than mine, right? They go to school and like the school's just like completely different culture. There's people from all over the world.
Yeah.
Whereas like when I went to school, it was basically just people who could drive there like from their parents' house. Right?
Yeah. Well, or people who would live there. Like when I went to school, Brent.
Yeah, that's a different era.
I mean, we had like Plato and Aristotle were teaching us. So it was, it was pretty good. But we were all international students back then. So we had to go to Greece. No, but there were like, international students weren't really a thing then. Like there's the odd one here and there.
Yeah.
But nothing like what we're looking at here. So 2015, 100,000 every year that went up. But if you look at the trends, like they're just
the line is increasing.
Yeah, it's getting larger and like the percentage of growth is getting larger and larger. So we had just over 300,000 in 2022. We are just about at that point for 2023, but we still have
September,
a quarter to go.
Yeah. So the data is not out yet on that.
Yeah, that was the end of September. So I mean, we're at least going to see 350,000 probably. So this is just in Ontario, international student visas. Like, wow. Right? So I mean, that's a population of, I don't know, population of somewhere.
What's the population of Hamilton?
Well, Hamilton's about...
Is it 500,000?
Just over 500 in the...
It's 540,000?
Yeah. But just imagine, right? That ridiculous growth. And it would be one thing if the federal government had said, hey, guys, like 10 years ago, and it's interesting, a lot of this seems to have started around when a certain prime minister came into office. But if they just told everybody, like whether you agree with it or not, here's our plan.
Yeah.
So start preparing. Like that's responsible, right? We're going to see a lot of growth, and like everybody get ready, because we need to, like, whether you agree,
Yeah.
Like but I said, if you agree or not.
Yeah. But if no one experiences the pain of not being able to find a house or the rent going up, right? Nobody's like, it's not like 10 years ago people were all of a sudden, okay, let's make 100 units of whatever housing in this little neighborhood because population's coming, right? Let's be it's hard to financially incentivize that, because who's going to take the risk of building housing when the demand's not there, right? Because if you build it, you're going to spend the money on building it, but then you're not going to have the income that you need to pay for that. So you have to have a lot of foresight to do that, right?
Okay, but you don't need to have a lot of foresight to like model out population growth.
Yeah.
And here's how, and maybe not immediately, but after a few years, because every year they consistently exceeded immigration targets.
Yeah.
Like every year they would have a target and they would break it. So, and like this is intentional, because it's not like there's just...
but you were saying it would be responsible for the government to say, okay, guys, let's make some housing for these people because they're coming.
Well, right? Even housing, like you said, because housing, as we know, is not created by the government as much as they would like to pretend that they create it.
Yeah. They're pretty good at pretending.
Yeah, that's the Pretenders. That was a good group, and now they're back from the 70s and 80s. But it's not, for such a strong centrally planned government, right? We have federal, we have provincial, we have municipal. You talked a little bit about the growth in government employees, which is just staggering.
Yeah.
Right? What was the number?
Did we say that on the show already?
No. It was before.
Oh, I got
something like
it back.
Private sector growth was 3.3%.
Yeah, 1 sec. Yeah. And, oh, man. It blows my mind. Yeah, okay. So this is for a Fraser Institute study that found between February 2020 and June 2023. So it's a 3-year period. The government sector job growth was 11.8% growth, and the private sector was 3.3.
Oh, man.
The number of government bureaucrats increased by a whopping 446,000 people over that period.
So with that additional 446,000 people, you would think somebody would say, like, hey, we got to coordinate. Like, it's not just housing, right? Leave housing to the side, but what about infrastructure?
Yeah.
Right? Like, you need more of everything. You need more hospitals. You need more services. And maybe that's where some of these government employees are working. But, like, I doubt it, because...
Some of them. It's like all of them. Only 3% are going to the private.
Well, who knows where they're working, right?
Yeah.
At the Green Energy Slush Fund or something. But yeah, and then with housing, like, there are ways to incentivize housing.
Yeah.
Right? What was it? 2021, John Tory increased development charges in the city of Toronto by 49%. So... if you're the federal government and you're printing money anyways, then maybe you just go to the municipalities and say, hey, guys, cut your development charges to nothing or to very little, and we'll make up the rest. We'll fund you, right? There's a way to do it. Like, if you're going to waste money, like, they're plenty good at wasting money. Waste it on this so that we can incentivize more housing. Because if you cut development charges and cut all the process of being able to build houses, build a subdivision, build a purpose-built rental. It's a lot more attractive
to build, right?
Yeah. Because how long does it take? I think 7 years or something. If you want to build a subdivision in Ontario, something like that, from start to shovels in the ground is like 7 years, right? You go to Texas, those places in the States, where it's something like, it's less than a year.
Yeah.
Right? You go buy the land, and maybe you take a gamble, or maybe you start the permit process or whatever.
Yeah.
But, right, you get the land, you go get permits. Here's what we want to do. Good? Okay, build. Done.
Yeah. That's
so there's no need for all the red tape and all the bureaucracy.
You hearing that, people who are listening?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Government officials who are listening? I don't know. So, let me just read another quote. So this is the article it's from the Financial Post. The year 2022 set a record for housing starts at 320,000. So, that was last year, a record housing start. So people are building houses, 320,000 units. But that's less than a third the immigration rate, and not even enough to house the 446 employees out of the federal public service in the last 3 years. So it's just hilarious, right? Like, we're actually building more houses, right? Like, they said it's a record number.
Last year. But look at housing starts now.
This year, okay.
Because those were those are projects that were already
but even
rolling.
Even if you do set a record on how many houses you're building, it's still 1/3 of the immigration rate. But immigration is like, it's not birth, right? With birth, like, a baby's born, he doesn't need a house, right? It's going to be like years and years.
Maybe if you're like one of those Saudi babies, the royal family, right?
And you get a house, and you get a house.
You get a palace right away.
But, like, that's population growth that doesn't...
Organic growth.
Yeah, that doesn't require instantaneous household formation. Whereas immigration, like, unless you're... like you mentioned, there's a portion of the people who are families reuniting, right? Or perhaps that sort of thing.
Like
where,
household formation,
where people are coming over, but they already have family here, a place to stay. Okay, they maybe want a house, and they would choose to live in their own house, but they're not going to necessarily, need that right away. But most immigrants are non-permanent residents. They're just going to need a place to live. Like they don't have families. Not like they're, you know.
Well, the students for sure. They're all like single students, and now they'll live through. They'll pack them and tighten their house. But now keep in mind when we talk about housing units, each housing unit will hold like not just one person, right?
Yeah.
So the numbers I've seen recently are 2.5. I had always worked with the assumption of 2.9.
Yeah.
But so somewhere between 2.5 to 3 people will live in one housing unit.
Yeah. Okay.
And you know that's an average, right? So a housing unit could have 3 bedrooms. It'll have more people. A 1 bedroom might just have 1 person.
Yeah.
Or maybe it has 2 people, or 2 people and a baby.
Yeah.
And a cat and a dog. But we don't count fur babies. So.
But if you tripled that to what it based on our actual housing supply and housing starts, and just say, okay, well, if our immigration is triple the housing, like you need to have 3 times that. So if you're saying it's 2.5 or 3, so you need 8, 9 people in a house or per housing unit. Anyways.
Yeah. So here's another one. Annual population growth, number of persons by source. So we've seen, again, if you're listening, you won't see this, but it's a chart, some colors on it. So we have permanent residents is the blue section here. Non-permanent residents is orange. All else is the gray. And so all else was actually negative the last few years.
We're just into hockey sticks in this podcast.
Pretty much. Well, Canadian, right?
Yeah.
Celebrate our culture.
That's what Canada's, maybe Justin Trudeau's legacy is going to be like the hockey stick. All of our statistics were straight forever.
You'll have enough hockey sticks for an entire NHL team, right? Like deficit, debt, bureaucracy,
number of employees of the government.
Okay, I'm starting to understand now what okay. It's all based on hockey.
We should start this. Like, I have the Century 21 initiative, and now we need like the hockey stick initiative.
Oh man, no, Century 21's a real estate group, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's the
21st Century Initiative.
I can't remember. What
100
C100
something. Yeah.
Anyways, getting back to this annual population growth just in Ontario.
I think it's the Century Initiative.
Yes, I think you're right. Right, we could say an average of probably 175,000 since 1971. Hey, this chart starts in 1971. Interesting. Right, and then you saw an uptick in 2016, started to push up. We had COVID, it dropped down again. But then just this massive growth, right? 2021 to 22, over 300,000 new people just in Ontario. And then this year so far, the year's not 2022 to 23, we're just over 500,000. Just mind blowing. And that's just Ontario. And you got to remember, when we have this massive growth, influx, right? Most, like half of the people are going to the areas around Vancouver and Toronto.
Yeah.
Right. You've got some Calgary and some other, like Montreal has secondary things, and even probably Hamilton, I would argue, as sort of secondary targets or whatever. But it's not like they're evenly spread out. There's not a lot of people moving to Saskatchewan or Manitoba, right?
Yeah.
And
I don't this is not sustainable. And I think this article here, you put it up. So this is from Better Dwelling. So Canada's immigration plan is not viable in any version of reality. BMO. So that's a BMO, a comment from BMO.
Bank of Montreal.
Yeah. They in the article they talk about how the fact that we tripled our immigration, right? And they just say despite any or many commendable efforts, in no version of reality can housing supply respond to an almost overnight tripling in the run rate of new bodies. So there is no practical way that housing can keep up. Even if you had unlimited money, there's still other limitations that just
we don't have enough.
There is no way to keep up with this. So that's that kind of makes the affordability crisis that everyone's talking about in housing
Yeah.
like even worse, right?
And I'd like to point out that even if we stopped immigration right now,
Yeah.
like we have a housing crisis. We have like record numbers of homeless encampments all over the place, people using food banks. Even if we stopped it right now, this crisis will continue for
Yeah.
years.
It's like inflation,
Unless
right?
everybody moves back
Yeah.
home. Everybody who came here, like millions of people move back home. We can get back to affordability.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah.
it's like inflation, right? Once inflation goes up, it doesn't go back down. And
Yeah.
I looked into this a little bit too with rents. So like same thing with rents, right? Historical rents go up, right? But they don't come down. And I was just digging up some rent numbers the other day, and you can kind of see like every time there's some sort of crisis, the rent doesn't actually go down.
No.
Or it doesn't go up like crazy and then come down for a little bit and go, like it just continually climbs up,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, you can say, okay, well, inflation's slowing down, or let's say immigration. Let's say next year they decide, oh, this is not politically popular. We got to stop, like tone this down. Let's reduce the immigration numbers back down to like 400,000 instead of 1.2 million.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
That's
but it's still going up, Mark.
It's still
It's not-
adding on to the
you'd have
people
to
that are
go-
already here.
You have to go minus 1.2 million for a couple of years to get back to where we
Yeah.
were 2 years ago. And oh man.
It's yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, what else can you say about it? It's
We just need to build more houses, Mark.
so yeah, our non-permanent resident population is now, well, you said over 2.5 million, right? For a country of 40 million people, right?
Yeah.
At the current rate, in a few years, we'll be at like 10% of our population will be in non-permanent
I
residents.
think you need to repeat that. Okay.
In a
10.
Yeah, so we're at like probably 6 or 7% of our population is non-permanent residents. Like, what does that do to, like, even just think about culture?
Yeah.
And like we've talked about infrastructure and all this other stuff, but what does that do to culture, right?
Yeah.
There are the more conspiracy-minded people
Yeah.
out there who say that, look, this is further proof of, this sort of global elite, the World
Cultural
Economic Forum.
change. Yeah.
Well, and you see this, like, it's definitely happening in Europe.
Yeah.
And they're saying that they want it to happen here, where they're trying intentionally to destroy sort of this European white Christian
like the
culture.
values. Yeah.
Yeah, just trying to destroy this culture.
Yeah.
Because the people who are immigrating, by and large, are from Muslim countries.
Yeah.
Right? In India, I wouldn't say, like, India is one of the biggest sources of international students. So, I mean, it's not, I don't think they're majority Muslim, but there are a lot of Muslims there, right?
Yeah.
But you've also got Sikhs and Hindus. But the point is, people from sort of these traditional, first world countries are not the ones who are immigrating. It's people from third world, second world countries,
Yeah.
right? So the argument is that they're trying to destroy our culture. And, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I can't ascribe that much competence to any government,
Yeah.
right? When you look at just the sheer incompetence and corruption.
But there's so many of them. They got 446,000 new employees. You think that they would be a little bit smarter?
Well, no, but that's part of the issue, right?
Yeah.
Is that it's self-perpetuating. And when
Yeah.
it's dumb ideas, those dumb ideas spawn more dumb ideas. And you get
Yeah,
fiefdoms.
I just think about that. Like, if you have that many more government employees,
It's
and
that
the
many more dumb
government
ideas.
is funded by the private sector, and the private sector grew at 3.3% versus 11. Like,
Interesting.
where is the money coming to pay for all those government
Yeah.
employees, right?
Yeah, it's certainly
How-
not coming from the private sector, unless you look at increased taxes.
Yeah, it's coming from
And so that's-
printed money.
Well, it's just more evidence
Hey,
that
this
we're gonna.
episode dovetails quite well with our currency.
Well, it does. It's evidence that we're going to see more inflation. We have to. Who's going to pay for everything? It's not the private sector. The private sector in home building is pulling back, right?
Yeah.
Home starts are going to drop, and
Yeah. Well, what's interesting so the private sector is tied to reality, right? Like The private sector, obviously, they can't print money, is what I'm saying. They can't just do things with no consequences. So if they're going to build a house and it's not there's no financial reward to do it, like they're going to get punished and they're going to go broke or bankrupt, and then they can't build houses next year, right? And that goes for every private sector, unless they're getting government contracts or some sort of basically free money from someone who can print the money.
Yeah.
Right? So they're tied to reality, whereas the government, in many ways, they're kind of unhinged from reality.
They are, but they create a reality, which is maybe a false reality. Whoa, deep. Yeah. Very deep, Brent. But that dictates the behavior of the private sector. Right? Yeah. This is why real estate is such a big part of our economy in Canada, because people are naturally gravitating towards real estate because of what the government is doing. Yeah. And here, let me pull up another.
So if the government can do it, then the private sector can kind of benefit from that and kind of do it too, right? Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying.
Well, it's what we've talked about for a lot, right? Yeah. You have a money printer. The closer you stand to the money printer, that's the Cantillon effect, right? The more you benefit. And how do you stand close to the money printer? You buy real estate. Yeah. Because that's printing money.
That's literally getting your wheelbarrow and standing beside the money
Pretty much. Yeah. And I don't know. I'm trying to continue the the metaphor here. Taking that wheelbarrow and building a foundation of fiat money.
Okay.
Does that work?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Maybe you need to put these really smart glasses on.
I don't know. It didn't do anything for you. Okay, here's another chart.
I don't see any problems here, Mark. These are rose-colored glasses.
Yeah. And, maybe that's what the government's
I only
wearing.
see the positives.
Okay, another chart. Approved international student visas January 2022 to April 2023.
Okay, this is interesting stuff.
So we have Ontario colleges, Ontario universities, and then non-Ontario. So here's a big shock. Everything is Ontario. And almost everything except for one is Ontario. University Canada West. I mean, what is... There's clearly
how many of these universities or colleges were started, or new campuses were started in the last 3 years? That's what I want to know.
And that's what I was trying to say, and I just
because if you're increasing,
this is a made up thing. University Canada West, they clearly somebody started up a university, quote unquote, to cater solely to international students. Yeah. And you see a lot of these, just universities or colleges and strip malls. Yeah. And so we've talked about this before, previous episodes. Yeah. Where I've just gone off about this diploma mill and this terrible way of defrauding international students. Yeah. And how much damage this is doing to Canada, to our reputation, to these students. It's all a sham, and it's terrible. And when you look at these numbers, right, the number of international students. So Conestoga College, you're taking a lot of flack, and rightly so, right? The last 16 months, or from this study, 31,000 approved international student visas. 31,000 for some, I don't know. I remember it can grow. I'm sure it can grow, but it was a small college in Waterloo, I think.
Well, it's going to have to grow really fast.
Well, I had a look at their website, and
what does 31,000 people look like in one lecture hall there?
Well, so for example, McMaster University, where I went many moons ago, now has about 37,000 students. Yeah. But this is total. Yeah. Yeah. And I think they said 17% are international.
Is that all on one campus pretty much?
Yeah. They have I think maybe one or two small buildings somewhere else, one in Burlington, but that's all generally in that campus in Hamilton. Right. And so this is a mid-sized Canadian university, 37,000. So Conestoga College here, they've got, locations in Brantford, Cambridge, Guelph, Ingersoll, Kitchener, Milton, Stratford, Waterloo, and more coming. Yeah. And based on this growth of 31,000 per year. So I saw another infographic, which I don't have here. Yeah. But this is from somebody who is familiar with recruiting. And he was just a Canadian fella, and he's like, if I can recruit a college student,
Yeah.
average tuition would be about $20,000 a year.
Yeah, I think I have that here.
Oh, okay.
This one?
Let's see here. Oh, yeah, here we go. So this is for University Canada West, this made-up university. Look, maybe it's existed for a long time, but just looking at the name, I'm guessing it's somebody...
They're really pigeonholing themselves, right? It's got to be West. They can't do Central Canada.
Yeah, I know.
They can't do East, right?
They
So
don't
how are they
care.
going to expand?
So, okay, here's another, maybe not even conspiracy theory, right? Just based on the name. You know,
Mark,
this is
we gotta
probably
put
not a native
tinfoil
English
hat. We're going to
speaker.
wrap your head in tinfoil.
Pretty much. I'm going to start a fashion chain
Yeah.
made of tinfoil. No, so here's another thought. A lot of these private colleges, and like not Conestoga or some of these other ones that I had on the list, but a lot of these smaller ones are like, especially in Vancouver, look at the ownership. Who owns them?
Yeah.
Chinese nationals.
Yeah.
And who goes there? Chinese students.
Yeah.
So they've basically found a way to launder money out of China, which has been happening in Canada for years. Read Willful Blindness by Sam Cooper, if you don't believe me. But this is just another way to launder money out of China. And then now they can have this in a Canadian account, right?
Yeah.
And like, surely not all of the students so University Canada West has 14,000 students. Not all of them, like they're not all in on this and they're just trying to get money for this one guy into his bank account.
Yeah.
But the point is probably majority Chinese, I would imagine, who are coming here and getting useless diplomas.
Yeah.
And somebody's profiting off it. And like that money, where's that money going? So none of this is helping Canada, is my point.
Yeah.
Right. And like that's a problem. You allow,
Well,
like
in
the
fact,
diploma mill in itself is a problem.
It's not that it's just not helping; it's also hindering.
Yes. Yeah. But okay, back to the point though on this graphic. So this guy can make up to $3,000 commission for recruiting a student here.
Yeah. So for people who aren't looking at it, there's a gross tuition of $20,000. The application fee is $0, right? Because we got to incentivize getting people in here.
Yeah,
but there's
cut 'em a break.
there's a commission that's paid for somebody who kind of refers a student to this program of $3,000. Which when I went to school, that was basically the tuition.
That was exactly. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And you can bet that commission is bigger for people who are like operating in like either India or China. So India and China are two largest sources of international students.
Yeah.
And there are companies that's what they do. They just recruit.
Yeah. So that's you can pull this
Canadian-
up too. I have the company called Applyboard.
Okay, here we go.
Applyboard.com. You can Google this. I don't know. It's a recruiting company. Be seen by 100,000 students every month. So it's basically like talking, like this company is going between colleges, universities in Canada saying, or probably other places as well, saying, we have boots on the ground in places where you can get international students. If you use us, we'll help recruit students for you. And you can become a recruitment partner from them to grow your college or university, which is a huge financial incentive, right? Because in Canada, like you can only charge, we've talked about this before, you can only charge domestic students up to a certain amount in tuition, right? Whereas they cap it. Whereas in if you have international students, you can now all of a sudden charge 5 times that rate, and people would be willing to pay it because it's an opportunity to kind of get into the country, and maybe they and that's the other thing too that's kind of sad, right? You mentioned they kind of sell them a lie, basically say, look, hey, you're going to have this great life. You're going to move to this country and you're going to have housing. You're going to have, opportunity to work, and you're going to have to study. You're going to have a great education. They get here and then they see an ad on Facebook for like, hey, you got to share a bedroom or share a closet or even share a bed with somebody for $500 a month. Not very, not very nice to do that.
No, it's
It's false promises, right?
It is. And yeah, because they'll come here and realize.
And that was the other thing that was mentioned in one of these articles, was that immigration, like you can kind of expand immigration by doing these recruitment tactics and trying to make it easy for people to come here. But then at a certain point, the pendulum swings too far. People realize, hey, this is a false promise.
Yeah.
The word gets out, and now all of a sudden no matter how hard you try, you're not going to be able to get those numbers, and it's going to swing the other way, right? And we actually either lose people or not be able to attract the people that we want.
Yeah.
So you got to be really careful, right?
Well, and just demolish our reputation.
Yeah.
Right? Canada is a great place to live. Well, Canada is, like, if you're an international student, it sucks.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a
They've
great
taken
place to live if you already have a house.
Yeah. Well, if you're absolutely rich and
Yeah.
you can just buy a home, like, fine. But if you're, what did you say? It takes the average Indian family 74 years
Yeah.
to scrape together
Yeah, that was from this
tuition for 1 year for.
That was from the
Canada.
Fifth Estate. Did kind of
Yeah.
a documentary on this whole thing, right? How recruiters in India use false promises to lure students to Canada. Yeah, it's 70. The average Punjabi family 74 years income to pay for 1 year's tuition in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can imagine, right? They're mortgaging the family farm.
Yeah.
They're borrowing money from relatives and friends, and then these poor students are coming here and realizing this is terrible. And I've read some articles about this. People who did some investigative journalism, like this, the sense of shame is so strong. They realize it's terrible, but they can't say anything because of the extreme sacrifices of their families. Right. And they realize, like, wow, okay, now I've graduated. I can't get a good job.
Yeah.
And the expectation is you come here. So this is the other thing, right? They're diploma mills, and this is the alternate path to citizenship in Canada. So the idea is this whole family is going to sacrifice. They're going to get this student, and this is like an age-old story, right? But they're going to send this one young, promising person to this better country where they can get a good job, and then they can in turn support the family, whether that's bring some of the family over or just send money back. Well, these students are coming here and they're realizing, like, rent costs so much, food costs so much, I got nothing to send back home.
It's not going to work.
And so funeral homes are doing a booming business, especially in Brampton, because of suicides by international students. Like, what a sad story.
Yeah.
They're just so depressed about how things have gone here. I get the one funeral home was shipping at least 5 students a month back home to India, because of what's happening. And like, this is it's controllable, right? So I looked at quickly tuition at Conestoga for early childhood education resource consulting. So the total fees for the term spring 2024, $8,988,000.
8,900,000.
Sorry, $8,900, $9,000.
Okay, $9,000.
Stop trying to trip me up, Brent.
Think about all the taxes the government could charge on that, eh?
Well,
is there taxes on that stuff?
No,
not for domestic, but there's probably for foreign. No,
maybe, I don't know.
If there isn't, we should put it on there.
Yeah, that would be
and
one
then
thing.
Build some houses.
Yeah, but this is for one term, $9,000, right? So that graphic you had pulled up showed about $20,000 tuition.
Yeah.
So if I'm Conestoga,
and you got 31,000.
We've 31,000 people times 20,000 for just over a year, $620 million
of revenue
for one college.
Yeah.
In Ontario.
Yeah. And all
there is billions in revenue for colleges and universities. And it's like, we've been talking about this and how, dirty little secret. But
are we going to talk about how
open.
to actually start a college ourselves?
Yeah, I think so. Oh, man. Yeah, College of Dutch Cooking or something. There's a lot of potatoes on the menu.
Trudeau plans record number of immigrants to Canada through 2024. So I guess he's continuing. He wants to continue with this?
Well,
because Canada is founded on immigrants, more or less, right? Like, we need immigrants to continue our economy and economic growth.
We do, and people will often say we're built on immigrants. And so in the 50s, like, our parents or grandparents came here in the 50s and 60s, and but like, there were no social services. Yeah. They came here and they built stuff and they built institutions.
And
right?
Interestingly, too, they couldn't print money back then. Not the same.
No, it wasn't the same. Like it's completely different scenario. And you read about some of these food banks have started restricting access for international students, which is sad. But it's not because they're racist. It's because they don't have enough food.
Yeah.
For for the, I don't know what you want to call it, but the people who actually like permanent residents who live there.
Yeah.
They don't have enough food for to supply them. Right? And the idea is international students are supposed to be able to support themselves, right?
Yeah.
So what they'll do is right now it's $10,000 they have to have outside of tuition in a GIC, which is, hey, good for the banks, right? How convenient is that? They have to buy a GIC. And that requirement has been upped to $20,000 per year for the next year.
Yeah, that's this.
What do we got here? Oh, okay, yeah. And then, the number of hours they work. So immigration minister let that slip a while ago, right? He said that these international students are a lucrative source of
oops, not supposed to say
for business.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, what are you saying? Like, really? And like, it's true.
Yeah.
It is lucrative.
Yeah.
Right? If you go, like, I don't know, go any sort of minimum wage job, right? And like, who's working there? It's very obvious to see who's working there. It's international students.
Yeah.
Right? Because like, at least they want to work. Not like half the population here is content to be on welfare. But it's incredible.
Yeah. Well, and this just is going through how, pre-2006, no off-campus work allowed. Then April 2006, 2006, off-campus work permit program introduced, allowing up to 20 hours work off campus.
Yeah.
And then that kind of keeps going. 2014, that's terminated, and work permits no longer required to work up to 20 hours. And then in more recently, November 2022, all restrictions on off-campus work are waived.
Yeah. So interesting, right? So now, and this is what you see. You see students who come here and basically start working full-time right away while either attending university or college or not attending at all.
Yeah.
And just hoping to get, based on the length of time they've spent here and establishing roots, that they can apply for citizenship.
Yeah. Well, let's sum this up, Mark, because it was a little bit of a rant this episode. And
a little bit.
We want to move back into our series and continue that. But what can people take away from this? Because every time we talk about current events, it seems like, get your tinfoil and wrap it around your head.
I know. I feel like that because, like, when we were talking about, I don't know, before we did the podcast, like a few years ago, we talked about some of these trends in our real estate groups and stuff, right? But it wasn't like tinfoil hat kind of, just like, oh, interesting. Like, look at these trends, and that bodes well for real estate.
Yeah.
But now it's like we talked about the hockey sticks. All of these trends that were sort of steadily going up is now hockey stick, right? It's the end of the stick. They're going straight up, and you can say it's tinfoil hat, but like everybody can see it for what it is. Yeah. Right? If like it doesn't take a rocket surgeon.
I think part
to
of it too is
out.
that rocket surgeon. Part of it too is that like if it goes up that dramatically, it's not an organic growth. It's not like, hey, we had such a great experience in Canada, everybody's got to come here and check it out, right? It's you actually act like once you get that kind of growth, you actually have to try, like you have to put money and effort into getting that kind of growth, right? Yeah. It's kind of commendable in a sense, like the fact that you can actually hit that kind of target, right? Well, it takes marketing, it takes effort, it takes recruitment, and like it's a machine.
Well, you said, what can the government do to, the government can't make, cause more houses to be built. Well, they can certainly cause more international students to come. Yeah. They can cause local small colleges to have a ridiculous amount of
million dollars.
You sound like Biden.
Yeah.
million dollars. No, but they can cause meteoric growth in these institutions. Like you just have to give people a little bit of rope and a little bit of incentive, and they'll figure it out.
So how does this bode for like us, just average lay people talking about this?
Well, that depends where you are. If you're a real estate investor, we've talked a little bit about this, right? Like cash loan is hard right now in Southern Ontario.
Yeah.
But I mean,
because of
look at the trends because of interest rates and stuff and prices. But look at the trends. Like I never like to count on equity growth in a real estate portfolio, but I mean, just like I said, look at the trends. Do you see this? Do you see a return to affordability anytime soon?
Yeah.
CMHC said we need another 3.5 million homes by 2030 to, in addition to the homes that are already being built, to get to affordability. That was last year they said it.
Yeah.
Right? That must have increased by some factor by now because of the increased immigration. But like, do you see that happening? Right? Do you see immigration slowing?
Yeah.
Do you see inflation slowing? Right. If the answer to all those questions is no, then like here's my next question: do you see real estate prices going down?
Yeah.
No. And do you see rents going down? No. Right. I saw somebody had a calculation. They're like, I think we've kind of reached maximum rent. It's like 3,000 or average 2,500 in cities and $2,000 in non-urban areas. But like there's no basis for that. That's maybe there's some growth that they've seen where it's kind of leveled out right now. But as long as inflation goes up, the value of money goes down, rents are going to keep going up. And maybe rents won't go up, but units will get smaller. Yeah. So instead of duplexes, it's triplexes, or it's all student housing. That's the trend.
Yeah, that's the trend. And I think, Mark, maybe we just need to go get a government job. Because
there's lots out there.
They're hiring at double or triple or quadruple the rate.
Oh man, I could find. Yeah, how hard can it be, right? Anyway, so I mean, there's on one hand, from the real estate perspective, like, we talked about it, right? Do you think rents are going to go up? Probably, or prices are going to go up? Probably, but just culturally, what's happening in Canada, quality of life, all that stuff, like, it's tough. Inflation's this is all inflationary as well, by the way, adding all these people, right? So do you think food's going to get any cheaper? Nope. So you better be in a position to earn more money somehow to be able to afford life in Canada. And so, I mean, I was talking to my wife about it the other day. Like, it's a concern for us. What kind of Canada are our kids if we stay here? What kind of Canada is it going to be for them? It's going to be tough because all this stuff that's happening now has implications years in the future. It's not just going to, it didn't happen overnight, and it's not going to stop overnight. So, all right. There's your daily dose of cheer.
Right before Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Oh, and this, when's this coming out? This is after Christmas, won't it be? Yeah, well, either way, Merry Christmas to all our listeners. And, you got anything to say, Brent?
No, Happy New Year.
Wrap this up?
Steward your wealth wisely.
Okay. All right. Thanks, folks, for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Two Stewards Show. If you like my voice better, click subscribe.
And if you like my voice better, click share.
If you like both, give us a 5-star rating.
To interact with the show, feel free to reach out at hello@twostewards.ca.
We'll see you in the next episode. In the meantime, steward your wealth wisely.